Talking with the Chancellor here in his office. Thank you for your time. I know you're a big sports fan.
Yes.
Have you always been that way?
Yes, I was no good at most sports, but yeah, I've always been a fan.
What excites you about Illinois? And I see you at a lot of events. I know it's going to be an exciting thing for you to go to these games, right?
Well, it's very, very exciting for me to be at games, and I try to make all of the home games unless I'm conflicted with something out of town, and try to make anywhere between 2 to 3 of the away games as well, because it's critically important for me to support our athletic program, our coaches, and of course, the most important element, our players.
What does sports mean to this university, Chancellor?
Sports is absolutely a critical part of the university because our operational philosophy about students and athletics is that our student athletes are students first and athletes second. So it really is very much interwoven into the mission of the university, educational institution. Our main job is to provide a world-class education at an affordable price, but a lot of that education occurs outside of the classroom. It occurs across our many sports and as well as other activities that students get involved in. So people forget that being a student athlete is also part of that overarching educational experience.
No doubt about it. And you have seen a rise here at Illinois in your time.
Yes.
Take me through that and that evolution of getting to where Illinois is now as a contender.
Well, when I came here in terms of student population, the university had about 46,000 students. Now we have 57,000 students. And part of that growth is in part because the transformation I think that we've seen in our athletics program. Whether people want to believe it or not, that is a big draw in terms of students initially becoming interested in your university. And we've really been working hard to move our athletics program up to the next level of excellence. And I think across the board, we're making significant progress, as you've seen with our women's basketball team last year, the winningest team we've had in decades. And of course, Underwood and Bilma just really have transformed the basketball program and our football program as well. And you know, we've always had a winning golf team. Coach Small is just absolutely amazing, the winningest coach, I think, in golf anywhere in the country. And it goes on and on. Volleyball, all of our sports are doing extremely well. And that's largely because of Josh Whitman. I'm very, very proud to have the most amazing AD, I think, in the country, who's focused on the student-athlete experience, hiring the best coaches, and critically important, making sure we have the facilities to give those student athletes and those coaches the best chance of winning and being successful. That's absolutely key, and Josh has been absolutely amazing in that regard and has built the philanthropic support to help all of the building and the capital projects that we've been involved in the 8 years that I've been here.
Out of all of those things, what stands out to you most about what Josh brings to the table? Certainly the donors, the leadership,
yes,
and hiring the right coaches. Out of those things, what stands out to you most?
His integrity. You won't find anyone that's more absolutely committed to doing things right the first time and the last time and every time in between. And that integrity, that great sense of responsibility for our young people and integrity of the coaches that we are, it permeates throughout the whole organization. It creates this ethos of expectation that not only that we have for athletics, but we have for all of our students at this university. And that's the one thing that you can say about Josh. Great vision, great integrity.
What's your role in the Big Ten Council of Presidents and Chancellors? I know you're the chair of that. What does that mean in a typical, layman's term, Chancellor?
Well, it means essentially that I am the chair of the board and the Council of Presidents and Chancellors at this moment, all 14, soon to be 16, soon to be 18, presidents and chancellors constitute the board for the Big Ten. As you know, University of Illinois were one of the original members, founding members of the Big Ten Conference. So as chair, it's my responsibility to work very closely with my colleagues from the other member institutions, but also work very closely with the commissioner. and setting policy, determining strategic direction, evaluating the performance of the commissioner, and just thinking about the future of intercollegiate athletics and what does it mean for the Big Ten and for all of our member institutions.
That's a good question, right? I know you have all the answers about what the NCAA is going to look like in 10 years, right? I'm kidding,
I don't
obviously.
have a clue. No one knows.
Yeah, exactly.
All I can say is just hold on and wait and see.
Exactly, with that. What have you made of Tony Petitti in his short time here, certainly taking on a lot in a short amount of time?
Tony is absolutely amazing, coming after a very innovative and very successful commissioner, Kevin Warren, who I've known for probably more than 20 years back when I was at University of Minnesota, and he was the CEO of the Minnesota Vikings. So Tony was the right choice to succeed Kevin. He has a different style, different way of getting things done, but he's very thoughtful, very strategic. And I just think he's done an amazing job in the short time that he's been here. He's made the rounds of meeting with all the presidents. He's on that great circuit now. I had dinner with him last night, and he'll be headed to Penn State from here. So he's getting around to visiting all the campuses, which is critically important for a commissioner to do. And I can tell you, my colleagues and I have great respect for Tony and great expectation that he'll help us think strategically about how to move the Big Ten to the next level of excellence, and that we will remain the preeminent conference in all of the NCAA.
A lot of change has happened here, and there's certainly bound to be more change coming in a lot of different areas. How important is this time in history for the Big Ten, for Illinois, to innovate? We've heard Josh talk a lot about that you don't want to be on the sideline moving forward with all of this.
If you're on the sideline with all of this, you will be less than you are today. You will be left behind. And so we are in a strategic, good position now strategically. To be innovating as we should, given our preeminence as the Big Ten Conference, and it's allowed us to think differently about what the conference is going to look like, and also trying to contemplate what the NCAA and what intercollegiate athletics writ large is going to look like in 12, 24 months. There's a lot of issues out there, legal issues, court issues, and student welfare issues, and so we're having to balance all of that. And Tony is absolutely a strategic thinker. He listens well, and I think he is settling in quite nicely into this new experience for him. You know, spending the last few years in Major League Baseball. We had a conversation last night about how different leading Major League Baseball compares to leading the Big Ten Conference. And, he's settled in like it's an old pair of comfortable shoes, and he's wearing them quite well. So,
yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that he comes from a TV background. Certainly,
right.
A lot of this is driven by TV.
Yep.
From your standpoint, how do you balance the money that's coming in with TV and keeping it about the student-athlete welfare that you mentioned? It's
critically important, and you have to have both. And first and foremost, as I said, as a conference, we're the one conference that is known first and foremost for academics. The fact that most of our institutions are AAU members. So that academic component gives us a different kind of look compared to the rest of the athletic conferences. And as I said, that commitment to student welfare, that our athletes are students first and athletes second, always grounds us in every financial decision we have to make, whether you're talking about conference expansion, always is driven, first of all, what's going to be the impact on the student athlete? And then, of course, these things don't pay for themselves. The revenue part of it has to be a consideration, but we're very, very proud that all of my colleagues, myself, and Tony are very much focused on the student-athlete experience, putting together the most winning programs that we can, and making sure that we stay student-focused.
Do you think the students have responded well from this? What have you heard from them about, certainly not football and basketball, but the other students, volleyball, soccer, traveling to the West Coast for a Thursday game? How do you put that all in perspective?
So far, what I'm hearing from our students and the other students from my colleagues, I think they see the benefit, of expanding the conference the way that we've done it. We did it very thoughtfully. And I think the students are very, very excited, because I was having a conversation, I think it was Tony or someone a few days ago, and their perspective was that not only are the football, conference expansion focused mainly on basketball and football, but the Olympic sports students also, what we're hearing, are very excited about what this means for them. Different opportunities to play teams that they haven't played on a regular basis, and them being part of the Big Ten family has caused them to be much more excited about their being part of the Big Ten, and how the Big Ten will remain one of the preeminent conferences in all of the NCAA.
Through all of this, where do you feel like we're going from here?
Onward, upward. That's the only place we can go. This is a very turbulent but very exciting times in the history of intercollegiate athletics. And as you alluded to earlier, we want to be on the leading edge, not the bleeding edge of what's going on. And we're very, very excited that, you can only just look at the number of calls that I get and all of my colleagues get about conference expansion. And I can tell you it's just gratifying to be part of a conference that is viewed not only by us, by external audiences, and I will say some other conference affiliates as well, as being the best conference in the country at this juncture. And that's an admirable position to be in, and one that we plan to hold on to, because we do keep academics first, and the athletic and student experience pieces are critically important to us.
Are we getting closer to a separation between the top tier, whether that's the Big Ten and SEC, maybe you throw another conference in there, and the quote-unquote second tier of conferences in this country?
That's not for me to say. All I can say is that just wait and see. I'm not going to touch that.
Sure. Do you feel like the Big Ten is done? Is there more to do there to add to get to a 20 or even possibly more than that?
This work is never done. If you're asking specifically about conference expansion, one of the things that I've done is appointed a joint working group that's made up about 5 or 6 of my colleagues who are taking the deep dive, doing the data analytics. And this was in process before we added Oregon and Washington. But unfortunately, the movement of Colorado kind of put everything in hyperdrive, and we had to kind of jump beyond that. But we have an ongoing committee that's doing the deep dive analysis to help us to be prepared to make a decision in our own time and in our own way about conference expansion. So I can't say at this juncture. I can guarantee you won't be hearing anything about expansion in the next 2 or 3 days. So let me just put it that way.
That's the world we got to live in here, right? It's just like, hey, we'll take it one day at a time. You never know.
I mean, let's be honest about it. I made the comment to a certain individual that, no, we're just focusing on integrating USC and UCLA, and then all of a sudden, one player, one entity, Colorado makes a move that causes everything else to get kicked into hyperdrive. And so, but at this point, we're just focusing on integrating those 4 institutions and doing the thoughtful analysis to see what the landscape is, and hopefully continue to be prepared if there's a strategic opportunity to expand that aligns with our value propositions. And if not, 18 is a good number.
That's certainly a lot more than it was just a few years ago. How much of your day, and you have a lot going on, obviously, do you spend in sports? How much of your time do you spend with this, outside of maybe just the last few weeks or months where it's certainly been a lot more than normal?
The last few weeks have been a lot more than normal. I made a comment the other day that I tried to take a 7 and 10-day vacation, and it became a 7-day to 10-day focus period being away from here. I actually was down in Texas, and spent most of that time working with Commissioner Petiti, the executive committee, and the Council of Presidents and Chancellors to make decisions about to expand and how to move forward with that. So I would say in the last couple of weeks, it's been taking 50, 60% of my time. Before that, I would say on average about 30% of my time, you know, including going to basketball games, football games, volleyball games, occasional baseball games, softball games, and I try to participate and see as many of our student athletes play as I possibly can. I haven't quite made all the rounds yet, but we'll get that done this year.
That's the fun part, when you can just go and enjoy a game and not have to be worrying about the business aspect of it.
But it's a critical part of what I do on a daily basis, and I'm also involved with Charlie Baker, the new commissioner of the NCAA. We're part of, he meets somewhat regularly with the presidents or the chairs of the board of the Power 5 conferences to get our opinion about the work that he's doing to try to move the NCAA forward and to deal with some of the issues regarding NIL and other things that he's trying to help us work on. So my involvement now with all that's going on is not only with the Big Ten, but with the big Power 5 entities and with the president of the NCAA.
Where do you see NIL going in the future?
You know, I think NIL is probably going to be with us for quite some time, and I see there being much more clarity about what it is and what it isn't, and much more effort to try to clarify what the rules are, and much more effort to make sure that everybody is abiding by those rules. You know, you have the collectives, and you got the issue of how NIL was first rolled out, and there's a lot of confusion, I think, out there now about NIL, and we've been working with Charlie Baker and others to try to clarify some of these issues and to make sure that everybody is working from the same level playing field. So,
is Congress needed in that?
I think so, because it's hard to kind of figure out how we get there in an environment around antitrust unless there's some congressional intervention and clarity about what the rules are and what they aren't.
What's the challenges if Congress does get involved, or are there any?
Well, there are about 6 or 7 different bills floating out there, and I can tell you some of them are quite encouraging, some of them are quite troubling. And so that's the issue. You know, everybody sees NIL as differently, depending on their perspective and what laws are being passed or attempting to be passed in their states. So it really needs to have more regulation and more control in order for NIL to be effective in what it was originally supposed to do, and that is to make sure that our student athletes are benefiting, you know, from their name, image, and likeness, and benefiting from the revenue that's generated by these conferences in a way that's appropriate.
Certainly a hot topic for a lot of people. Everyone has an opinion.
Yeah.
Everyone also has an opinion about a mascot. Does Illinois need a mascot, Chancellor?
I'm going to take the fifth on that one.
Where do we stand with that?
Depends on where you talk about need. No, I don't think we have a very fine university, and as I've said, there are many universities that don't have mascots, but I fully understand the needs of some of our students and some of our alums about wanting some point of pride, something to point to, something to rally around this student experience. And we've created a process that will help vet what is a mascot, what is the role of a mascot, how is that supposed to play into building a stronger sense of belonging, which is one of the things that I think most people would agree that's missing. But the main thing, as I've said before, that we have to have clarity about if a mascot is part of our future, what's the process of rolling out the different options, because there's more than one option, there's more than one perspective on what a mascot might look like and what it might be. So we have a task force that's going to be working on new traditions, which includes a mascot, includes other things that you will see at game day, and you're going to see some of that playing out in the football season and basketball later in the year.
Do you guys have a timeline on when you would like to either make a move or decide whether the school needs a mascot or not?
I don't have a timeline. I've been patiently and strategically working on this the whole 7 years that I've been here. And we are making changes. It's slow, it's incremental, but it's critically important. And I think we've had some success in moving away from some of the Native American imagery that is clearly inappropriate, that's been deemed so by the NCAA 20-some years ago. And we've made some progress in that regard by just having a conversation with people on both sides of the issue. And we formed kind of a coalition of the willing to kind of work toward being open to the notion of that new traditions, but at the same time, making sure everybody understands there's no place for Native American imagery at this university. And we've made that decision, and I think there's a lot of folks that have rallied behind that notion. We are trying to build a university that is respectful, and that's why we open each and every event at this university with something called the Land Acknowledgement Statement as our way of respecting the Native people that were in these lands long before they were settled and long before this university. As a land-grant university, we are settled on land that originally belonged to Native people that occupied this territory. And we started our land acknowledgement statement by recognizing those nine tribal nations that constituted this federation or group of people that lived in this area. And we've made some investments and other things in terms of hiring more Native American faculty and doing all kinds of things to really kind of move beyond imagery regarding sports to really honoring Native people. And so I'm very clear that whatever we do with the mascot will not have any ties back to Native American imagery of any kind. And students and alums will have to come up with a process that's fair, that's open and transparent if we decide to move towards some kind of mascot.
Certainly a lot to balance there moving forward.
It's a lot to balance, but that's why they call this a university.
Yeah, no doubt. You mentioned the students, and population is on the rise. It's growing. How much of a part of that is your strategic plan to continue to attract students here?
Well, it's at the absolute top of our strategic plan. Keeping education accessible and affordable has been part of our strategic plan since I arrived. It started with the next 150, which was a strategic plan that we laid out for the first 5 years. And now that we are moving beyond that, we're not moving beyond it, we're extending it with the next strategic plan that's called Boldly Illinois. And so what you'll see is the core elements that we had in the next 150 are being carried forth in Boldly Illinois, but taking a deeper dive to think more strategically about how we continue to drive enrollment at this university, how we continue to keep education accessible and affordable. I think you're aware we created the Illinois Commitment out of that strategic planning process that provides free tuition and fees for any student from a family of $67,100 or less, gets free tuition and fees at this university for 4 years if they're a first-year student, and 3 years for transfer students. We will continue to think strategically about Illinois Commitment, as well as there are some new ideas that's going to be emerging out of our strategic planning process that's going to assure that we will stay compliant with federal law, but at the same time we understand the core value of equity and diversity as a core component of this university. So as you said, a lot to balance, but we're very, very excited that our plan has grown the enrollment of this university. The recruitment efforts have been amazing. We had the most successful fundraising campaign in the history of the university, set out a goal of $2.25 billion, and that's billion with a B, and we raised actually $2.7 billion. So there's a lot that's transpired in the last 7 years that we're very proud of because we've tried to be very clear about where we're going. We tried to involve the broader university in terms of our faculty, staff, and our alums. Current students and future students are all engaged in where we're trying to go as an institution.